Welcome. We're back with Connect This. We've got a different crew than normal because Kim is somewhere over the Atlantic, flapping her wings frantically, flapping her arms frantically. It's the second time that we're using this Riverside platform. I think we got a few things figured out, but bear with us and always let us know what's going on in your perception. I'm Chris Mitchell with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and I'm pretty excited about today's show. We got a few hot topics to talk about. I'll preview those, and then we're going to be digging into something we've barely talked on before, which is that internet service providers need software behind the scenes to make stuff work. And we're going to talk about that today. But first of all, we've got Doug Dawson sitting down there in North Carolina. Welcome back, Doug.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Interesting news. Tomorrow is the it's the anniversary of a hurricane last year, and on Tuesday we're possibly getting another one.
Oh no! Wow, I didn't see that.
Yeah, if it doesn't turn, it's headed our way. We'll see.
Yeah.
So
maybe some short-term pain followed by maybe we'll get fiber this time from Charter rather than slightly better HFC.
Maybe.
We've got Travis Carter, who joins us from boredom, I presume. I assume that your wife is tired of you pounding the clicker and looking for something on daytime television, Travis.
No, actually, I have discovered something that's new in my world. It's called the afternoon nap. So trying to decide the optimal, is it half hour, 60 minutes, or 90 minutes? And currently, after 5 attempts, 60 minutes seems to be the sweet spot. So
if we see you nod off, we'll know that you'll come back at some point.
Yeah, well, we got a hard stop at 2 here. So let's get this rolling, Mitchell. I got an hour nap.
So you haven't napped yet today?
Purely R&D. So yes, this is just research.
I'm a huge fan. I in my old office, I had an office right next to the boss, and I would sometimes just lay down on the ground and throw a fleece behind my head and nap for 30 minutes and hope that he didn't want anything from me.
Nice.
So, yeah. We got Josh Johnson, who is the CIO at Fibersmith. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks. I'm excited to be on.
Yes, we'll see how excited you are when you get a sense of what this show is really like. I don't know if you took the time to preview. The fact that you're here suggests to me that maybe you haven't seen past episodes.
Well, I just recently installed YouTube and was able to watch a few episodes. So I think I know what I'm getting into. I didn't know about discussions of naps, so I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah. Well, that means he's ready for derision because we're high on derision. We like derision.
And then we've got Donny Smith, who's just, I think, a legend. Donny Smith, who has built fiber networks, who has rustled cows in 747s, who has done any number of interesting things over the course of his life, and runs Fibersmith, I presume. But it was in a bar probably 6 years ago, Donny. I think you, me, Travis, Eric Lampland, a few others, and you said you were starting to do software, and I thought that was pretty cool. We're gonna be talking about that today.
It sounds great, Chris. It's nice seeing y'all.
No, I feel like you got to come up with a little more energy than that if I'm gonna for people who don't know you.
Chris, I'm not very good at this kind of stuff in public speaking and being on a show. So no, it really is good to see everybody, and Travis and Doug, old friends, and you, Chris, are old friends. And Josh and I and another partner have built this software company to try and help beyond just helping with the engineering and the advice on a company that you do as an engineering company. And we've tried to go beyond that to build the help into the systems that they need to operate.
And what I'm hearing, it works. So, I mean, one of the reasons I'm having you on is because I was just reminded recently by a couple of different ISPs that you're doing this because they're using it and liking it. So I thought that was pretty cool. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about BEAD, what's going on there. We've been off for 3 weeks, so there's a few things that have happened. We're going to not let that take over the whole show, though. I think Doug's going to walk us through a little bit about what happened in New York City with an attack on the potential attack on the wireless cellular phone system. Talk about fake scam texts because I think that's somewhat relevant to perhaps the future of wireless and some of the things that are going on there kind of fit in. And then we're going to dig into some of the software. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is one of the things that just drives me crazy. And I know that since Donny, you have a ton of experience building rural fiber, and Josh, I don't know, like if you have that same experience or if you're more on the software side. But I've learned from people who have real experience building rural fiber that the notion of prevailing wage, while I think many of us agree it is a good idea that federal funds should not be used to depress wages, that prevailing wage is a system that does not work in many places. So, Doug, when I brought this up, you immediately knew what I was talking about. And I think I'll just hand it over to you to talk a little bit about the recent news from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Pennsylvania has a crazy prevailing wage. Prevailing wages are government set wages by specific job titles that have to be used when you get state or federal grants in that state. Some states don't make you do it on state grants, some do. Pennsylvania makes you do it for both. And Pennsylvania only has one job category that they say is for all fiber positions for construction. And it's an electrical lineman rate. It's $83 an hour. So if you build fiber there, if you install fixed wireless networks, they have to pay $83 an hour for all the technical guys who do the construction. It's an insane rate. I mean, places like Illinois, where it's very, very high cost because of Chicago, are nowhere near $83. And so I've got several clients in the state who won BEAD, and it just drove up their costs like 30% to pay that wage rate. It's very insane. Yeah.
I first encountered this with the American Reinvestment and something ARA, the BTOP and BIP back 15 years ago. And at that point, it was Reedsburg, and Reedsburg, located right by the Wisconsin Dells, not a very large metropolitan area, pretty rural, especially then. And they were told that they had to pay their people the wages of a construction worker in Madison, because that was the only comparison they had. And I have to say, and I want to get other people in on this, but the part that just drives me crazy is we're talking about millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars or much more over time that is being spent on this. I feel like we could justify a bureaucrat actually doing some research to find out what real prevailing wage is. But this is where I feel like some of the frustration I just come from is that it's a noble idea, horribly implemented. And
one last point, and then you could talk to the others. A very interesting point is a lot of rural construction companies won't take prevailing wage jobs because they can't have some of their techs making a high rate and other ones not. It causes a tremendous amount of fighting inside the company. And so the folks who work in rural areas do not pay anywhere near those rates, but the people are absolutely happy taking the rates they pay. So, yeah.
Donny, you want to come in and tell me I'm wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. Prevailing wage is a program that I know probably more about than anybody should. But it was originally started to make it so that companies from farther away could not come in and take all the business from local companies. That has long passed, and the local companies are the ones that are getting hurt by it anymore. And they're not able to compete with these companies because they're forcing them to pay wages that are higher than the area, so they bid higher. And then they can't retain their workers because the workers don't continue to get paid that after the job is done. Like Doug said, a lot of them just don't take these jobs because you just can't afford to. And the prevailing wage does nothing to make a better project. It doesn't really make people's lives better. It throws a little bit of short-term money at people that they then get used to and have trouble when they don't have it. And it's not a good look for broadband. And they can't even deign to make a real prevailing wage for any category that's actually a broadband category.
Right. That's the issue, right? I mean, it's not the notion. I think it's the execution of like they haven't bothered to do surveys or to do the outreach that would be required to find out what people actually make in an area commonly, which is not going to be easy, but like we figure out hard problems all the time.
And then they arbitrarily assign what they assign. So we actually worked on a project during the ARRA era where if you dug a hole and your backhoe was sitting in the ditch, it was $70 an hour. And if you dug a hole and your backhoe was sitting in the yard, it was $15 an hour. Because one was a landscaper and one was a heavy equipment operator.
My favorite example is an ISP where the owner of the ISP, they had their son or daughter working, but it was a child working, and they were getting paid a reasonable wage, and the state demanded that child make more money. So, that's what we're spending our time doing. Josh, anything you want to add on this? I feel like I always wait on Travis because he brings the thunder at the end.
I mean, I know my lane, and so when Donny's speaking about prevailing wages, that is definitely his lane. So I'll stay out of that. But I concur with what everybody's saying. So yeah,
Travis.
All right. So you were talking about conspiracy theories before. Let's just run with this one for a minute. So do you think this is just another attempt to keep small ISPs from benefiting from local and state government grants because they just can't absorb that?
No, so if we play that out for a second, we'd have to assume that the people that made the classifications and that assign the sort of ideas of what Johnny what old Johnny Smith there was saying when what Donny was saying about the differences between being in the ditch or out of the ditch. The people who are making those decisions, they don't know what a small ISP is. I don't think they
know. And there's hundreds of categories of different wages for all sorts of industries in the list. Yeah.
All right. So let's run another conspiracy theory. So is this the local unions pressing this hard?
Well, the unions
in some states it is. Yeah.
The unions will absolutely push hard for wages that will not depress, and so they would like to see the wages set sufficiently high that it matches the union wages. But I don't know. Like, I think if you talk to some of these folks and said, "Hey, like, how about if we just make sure that like it's the right job classification and that it's some basic," I don't think they're going to object to that. Like, I don't know that CWA would fight for $83 an hour in Pennsylvania. That doesn't seem rational.
They would not.
And is it only for the grant work they're doing, or are they saying across your company?
Just for grant work.
So just for that project.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and so you can imagine, like, how great does that feel to be like the person who, like, you've got two job classifications, two people working a job classification. One of them's on that project for a month or two, and then and they're getting paid extra. The other person's like, "What's the deal?" It's just I can imagine managing that workforce is hard, which is why, as I think several people said, construction companies will often sit this out.
Yeah, well, I guess the way they probably do it is their in-house group will continue working on stuff that they're internally funding, and then when they get this grant, they'll just hire a consultant or a construction company to do that work and keep them completely separate, just job by job.
Because you have to pay prevailing for in-house folks too. Yes, so you're right.
Well, with the grant, or this is what I don't understand.
Yes, just for the grant. Just for the grant.
Yeah, so all you would do then is you would just hire a third-party construction company to do that work and not even include your internal folks. So,
Josh, were you gonna say
something? I don't know.
I mean, I just would agree. I mean, I recall I worked for a CLEC previous to Donny and I starting the software side, and I think that's in that situation, it's exactly what they did was because if you used local resources and had to pay them 80 something an hour, and then reality set in 2 years ago, you would have so much disgruntled, it just wouldn't work, right? And that goes back to what Donny was talking about, is like you're setting a bar in a window of time where everyone gets adjusted to making that kind of money, and then it disappears, and then they end up
Wait a minute. You can't start talking about setting the bar because Donny's knocked out a few drinks with a few of us over time. So.
What's funny is the version of Donny that I've gotten to know, it's a very rare occasion that I see Donny at the bar.
Well, I'll say that any event you're at where Donny's there, you'll see him because it's the same hat. So it's it's famous. It's great.
We've actually joked about putting a tracking tag on him when we're at conferences because quite frankly, so when Donny was smoking, it was easy to find him. He'd been in the smoker's circle holding court, right? But then when he stopped smoking, which was wonderful, we would lose him for big chunks of time. And so our other business partner, Nick, him and I were like, what are we going to do? And so we'd actually thought about putting a tracking tag on Donny, but he's since retired to go into shows. He's not going to shows anymore, so we don't have that concern anymore. So
nice. We're going to move on to Bede, and I just want to kick off Bede by saying I did a thing, and it's kind of funny. I feel like, I mean, I don't know, like I'm pretty excited about it. Sorry, I was just catching up on a chat that there's something going on live and the chat's not fully working. So people that have questions should keep putting it up. But I got a tip that basically, you know, we had states that were filing. The last time we did this show, actually, we talked about how like we were still excited that so much money was going to fiber, and the revised plans from the states, they were still reasonable, like in terms of like, you know, 2 out of 3 people locations were going to be getting fiber probably. And I guess we opened our big dumb mouths. And shortly after that, I got a few people telling me, actually, NTIA is not done messing with the states. NTIA is going to second guess a lot of these projects, and they're going to impose new technologies. After all this work was done, right? After states did these traveling road shows, and what happens? People came out to the road shows and they were like, y'all are going to screw us again. We know it. And the people from the state and NTIA were like, no, this is the program that we're going to get right, and we're going to get real connections out to you. And NTIA changed hands and decided to screw a bunch of people. And the way that they did it most recently was they injected a new level of second guessing. And so I broke the news on that. And then I've heard through the grapevine that it was actually the head of NTIA herself who wrote part of or all of a PDF fact sheet response to swampy special interests. So up here in St. Paul, Minnesota, in the swamp, the special interests were pushing for untested and unaccountable, throwing money out the window to projects that didn't merit it and wasting too much money. And the rest of the PDF explained that I was absolutely correct about the process that I had laid out. Only it took issue with me saying they were arbitrary price caps, and they said, no, these are in fact price caps that were rooted in a secret formula. So they're not arbitrary in any way. And
they got one thing right, though, the swamp part. So they nailed that. So yeah.
And the creature, you know. So, yeah.
And so Doug Adams then posted the numbers on a state-by-state basis. We've seen some of the plans. I've been trying to sort of figure out how to respond. Now, Doug just noted the changes in North Carolina, and the last thing, which I still haven't had any confirmation of, but the question is kind of, you know, once states go through with this, is this really it, or are they going to pull the rug one more time and still force those numbers down further? That I don't think we know yet. But NTIA does want to get the money out fast, it seems. And if I was scamming people, I'd want to get the money out fast too. I'll tell you that right now. If I was ripping off rural America to this amount, I'd want to do it just as soon as possible. So Doug, I'm not going to go to you first because I always go to you first. I want to go to Donny. And Donny, I'm just going to ask you not to unload with all of your feelings about this, but to give us a measured response.
So the measured response is this feels an awful lot like rushing up to the line in a football game to get the next play off before the review can be completed. Because they are just changing things that have no basis in fact. And they put out the new rules, they've delayed things. They talk about the speed increases. There were projects ready to start last year, and there were approved plans by the states last year, and none of those were done, and they still haven't been approved yet now, and I don't know when they will be approved. The idea of taking money from a technology that's going to be a one-time to one that's going to be many, many times, and that even can't make the bases on these things seems incredibly short-sighted to me. I mean, I can buy a piece of bread instead of a loaf of bread, and it's much cheaper, but I'm not going to eat for a week on it either. So that's my basic thing with this. And we have gone to a plan that isn't even getting bread. It's just getting something that maybe you can make into bread if you know how. So that's my short.
Yeah. I mean, that echoes what I'm saying. It's a good way to sum it up. Doug?
I want to talk to Travis now because I got 6 or 7 people contacted me the day after you went online with Curtis Dean and just went nuts on this topic. And so,
Really?
and so everyone's going like, what's going on with Chris, man? Because it turned, and I don't know what I looked at, it was like a 50-minute rant. Travis, he saves his rants for Curtis Dean instead of me and you. So,
Well,
I mean, his rants were good, but he had like 7 different rants all back.
Curtis gives me a shot once a year. I got to squeeze it all in.
yeah. I think we need to get some training because we haven't had a good rant in months.
No, we're not doing something right, Travis. But
I
you know, the point on this is all just outrageous because no matter how they came up with it, they did it wrong because BEAD has some very unusual characteristics. These are scattered locations that are not a coherent study area. So even if those statewide numbers they're using make sense, they don't make sense when you're hitting every 4th house. I mean, it just costs more money to get to these little scattered areas. You know, they just don't make any sense at all. Years ago, Minnesota actually did something similar, right? They used the cost quest model just to double check budgets people turned in. They didn't reject anybody from it, but they did it by county. They said this county costs more than this county. These statewide numbers make no sense. You go to North Carolina, where I'm at, can you really have one number that represents building in the sand by the ocean or building in Cherokee County that's 100% mountains? And the answer is no, you can't. And so this is insane. What's going to happen is they're going to give a whole bunch more money to satellite before they're done here. Well, they're not done yet. And your last question is, are they going to still have one more round? The rumor is they're going to go the whole way up to December 4th. Because now they're going to go start looking at individual grant requests and looking at the details, and they still may reject other people. They may say they're not qualified or whatever. We don't know. But this is just another weeding round. This may not be the final round. So, yeah, this is going to whack a whole lot more money out of it. And they've already cut 53% of the money out of the states that have reported. So, yeah. Unfortunately, that wasn't a rant. I should have gotten mad. Darn it. I had a chance.
We'll come. You can formulate your rant in your head. Ignore what Travis is about to say, and we're going to come back to you to talk about North Carolina in particular in the 5 counties. So, Travis, I'm just curious if you have any questions on what you've been seeing out there or what we've been talking about.
No, you know what, I kind of gave up on BEAD a while ago, because it's the same old story. So we'll see where it ends up. So, but I appreciate your guys' passion on it.
Well, Travis, I got to say, I think we talk about this often, but I'll just come back again. I feel like when we talked last time, I feel like SpaceX had just made the move for EchoStar. That's settled a little bit more. But since then, I keep seeing Kuiper getting more and more awards. Doug had a snarky comment about it in one of his recent posts. And I feel like you made the really good point. You don't, Kuiper, whether or not it works, they just don't have much spectrum. So I don't know if that's changed at all.
They're missing spectrum. They're missing liftability. They're missing a lot. So as far as I'm concerned, the low Earth, that whole conversation or that war has been won. And with that EchoStar bandwidth that they or the spectrum I think they're going to get, it's like mic drop moment for SpaceX. So it's done.
Yeah. Josh, did you want to jump in with anything, or you want to hold your fire for later on in the show?
I let Donny handle getting fired up about BEAD. It defies logic to me. So as a taxpayer, I just try to not pay attention because it's upsetting.
Well, the good news is, I mean, there's legislation moving, but as a taxpayer, you might be getting 20% of the money back in yet another fiasco of taxing broadband awards. So we haven't talked about that lately.
Move to Minnesota if you want to have taxpayer issues. So
hey, I got Donny to come down to Missouri because it's so much easier down here. So he fled south. So
I'm going to let you get away with that one, Travis. We'll talk about services after you live in Texas for a while.
No. I'm real big into the new fraud we have going on here in Minnesota. Wow.
Yeah.
It is now officially the largest company in the state of Minnesota, Fraud Inc. So,
I haven't been following it that closely. I'm guessing our listeners haven't, but I'll just say that if it follows the pattern of Florida, whoever commits the most fraud becomes the next state or the next federal senator from that state, and possibly has presidential ambitions.
Get into it, Chris, and get wound up because I think that'd be a whole new thing you could get a little tantrum on.
Yeah, no, I'm actually, and I'll say also for people who are looking for a good fall read, there's a bunch of Florida authors that take on these fraudulent companies and like make them pay like in novels, and it's fun to read a novel about some of these fraudsters actually getting their just desserts because it doesn't seem to happen enough in real life. But Doug, we've given you a chance now. Would you like to tell us what happened in North Carolina with the 5 counties in the form of a rant, please?
Okay, well, gee, I'm just not feeling very ranty today, but you know, this is the bargain of the benefit of the bargain round where they gave a large amount of North Carolina's money to satellite. And when you look at where it's all in the mountains. There's 5 mountainous counties that all the locations went to satellite. And you have to come out to these mountains. You know, these are not as tall and dramatic as the Rocky Mountains, but they are 100% treed. They are sharply, steep, and they're very close together. So there's no horizon in any direction, and it makes absolutely no sense for them to do that. And you just have to cross over and look in Tennessee and Kentucky, and they did exactly this. A lot of places to satellite. All the satellite is in the mountains. Because they were forced to take the low bids.
Doug, your connection was just acting like you were in a satellite connection in Eastern Tennessee.
Well, that's because, see, when I ran, Charter cuts me off. So yeah,
it does appear to do that.
They're going, don't do that. Don't do that.
So yeah. Doug, I mean, let me ask you, like, we've seen from some people the point of view of, you know what, if you live in Appalachia and there's not a lot of jobs around or economic prospects, you should move yourself to a place that is more thriving. And so should we not have the federal government say we're going to save tens of millions of dollars by basically encouraging people in these five counties to move someplace where they can live a modern life?
The day when they give everyone out there a $10,000 or $20,000 moving bonus to do that, then maybe we can talk about it.
When they that, could they move all of the people that don't want to work in the large cities out too, so they have a better economic opportunity?
Yeah,
or don't have a chance to work there.
And the last 2 counties are the original Cherokee tribe, so I guess they just don't deserve to be there. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not even gonna weigh in on that with the history there. I do feel like people have been forced to move enough. It is not an attractive history when government forces people to move. In my mind, what it comes down to is I do feel like, and we can toss this around briefly, but like, the Trump administration is so focused on the dollars. There's no sense that this is a generational investment. And even myself, when I'm thinking about like, do we want to spend $24,000 for a location in Northeast Louisiana to have high quality internet access? And my answer is probably, yeah, I think so. Now we can argue about fixed wireless and if it could bring the cost down, or if we could do it at a lower cost over a 10 or 20 year period, or this or that. Like, I'd be happy to have those conversations. But fundamentally, the internet is reordering society, and we're only at the beginning of it. I feel like people think like, oh, it's been happening for a while. No, like we're like significantly reordering society and making sure that everyone can participate. It should be a requirement. And then the difference between 97%, 95%, or 99% of the country having decent access is millions of people and a lot of productivity and opportunity that we will be losing if we just cut them off. So, I mean, I don't want to just sit here and say the Trump administration is bad for not wanting to spend this money. I think we should talk about why.
Yeah. It hasn't been around here. These areas haven't had broadband for 20 years like we are in cities. I mean, my engineer and some other folks just went to a town in Kentucky, no broadband, no cell coverage, none, zero. I mean, there's still some really bad holes around here. So, yep.
What do people do all day?
I really don't know, Travis.
Wow.
I mean,
I don't know. You're retired. I think they take naps.
Yeah, but if YouTube was down, I wouldn't have anything to do. So that's why I'm wondering.
And I don't know about Josh, but I know Donny loves that life, right? Donny's out there in a rural area. So I want to give you a chance, Donny, if you want to defend the wisdom of dropping $20,000 per location in some of these areas.
So the first thing is everybody looks at what does it cost for a particular site. Everything that's ever been done with utilities is an average, and that includes the averages cost in cities, not just the average cost in the country. It's always been that way with the electrical. It's always been that way with telephone. And we have ubiquitous coverage with telephone, and we have ubiquitous coverage with electrical. I know you can live off grid, but really, if you want it, it's there.
It sort of
And
is. I will say, in my work with tribes, they object to that term ubiquitous because there's a lot of folks that have been left behind. But I agree with you that, like, considering there's 340 million people we're talking about, the vast majority of people, overwhelming majority, have access to it. There's a very small number of people that have been left behind.
right. And so instead of doing that same type of a thing with internet, what we've done is we've defined broadband, and this is the, I think, 5th or 6th program I've lived through that has defined broadband as a speed that nobody's ever going to surpass. The first time it was 768K over 768K. I think we surpassed that. We surpassed 1 over 1. We've surpassed 10 over 1, and it's going to continue to grow over time. It may not grow at the same rates, but it will continue to grow. And so what we have seen here is a good example of history repeating itself. Since we didn't learn from the last 5 ones we did, we're now doing it another time. So it's going to get done a 7th time after this. This has gone from this one-time generational thing to a thing that will probably be repeated again within the next 10 years.
Yeah, that's my position as well. Although we're in the minority, Donny, people think we're crazy that it's going to come up again.
Well,
Hard drives are never going to
there's
be
nothing
bigger
wrong.
than
There's nothing wrong with
640K.
that opinion. Yeah, that opinion's okay. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that, like, I still feel like when people are like, "Oh, this is the once in a lifetime," I'm like, of a species that lives for 5 years. Like, yeah,
Right.
I'm
I'm guessing at least 15 million homes we're still not going to have broadband when all this nonsense is done. So yeah.
You think 15 million homes? Because I mean, like, the whole BEAD program is like on the order of like 4 million locations at this point, I think.
Right.
And
Right.
you're talking about homes versus,
Yes.
I get in my head, I get confused about people. And those are homes where there will be no physical access.
Not of the speeds they say you should be able to get. They will not have
Yeah.
100 by 20. Yes.
So one of the things that you would say right now is that the maps are so grossly incorrect
Yes.
that the
Yes.
majority of homes that need access are not even listed as being eligible.
Right. Or they're going to be served by a WISP or satellite who can't get through their tree cover. I mean, they're going to have a reason why they can't get it. Right. So,
Right. It's a good point. And I was on the radio. I was on Wisconsin Public Radio yesterday talking about the city of Superior built a municipal fiber network, open access, launched it. And we were talking about that. And they asked how many people in Wisconsin don't have access to internet. And I was like, no one knows because, like, we don't study it. Like, we only have people that pretend to want to know the real answer, do it, and they come up with these deeply flawed answers. So, but before we move on, we're going to move on in a second. Travis, I feel like I do want to give you a shot. I feel like you've been saying that if I remember correctly, and perhaps it might have just been to push my buttons, but I do feel like from your point of view, $20,000 per home seems like a lot when Starlink is out there.
Well, remember, 99% of what I do is just to push your buttons. So, no, I think where it's not available, Starlink is a valid, option. It's really quite amazing. But to Doug's point, in a lot of these areas, you just simply have so much tree coverage that any wireless technology is not going to satisfy. But it's just what dawns on me is, I don't know if you guys notice this, but the amount of construction going on everywhere I go, fiber-wise, is unbelievable. I've never seen this amount of construction. So are you guys also tracking, since BEAD's taken, what are we in now, year 5? How many passings have happened while all this, iteration has been happening with paperwork for the number of homes? And do we really have an accurate representation of how many are really unserved anymore?
we don't. And what everybody missed was how much money was spent on ARPA. It's a lot. So ARPA's got a lot of state grants out there.
So that was the rescue plan that just made money available for a variety of projects, and some number of local governments put that money into a variety of publicly owned and privately owned broadband investments.
Yes.
Okay. No, I was just curious. There's so much construction happening everywhere.
But I don't think it's happening like in these deeply rural areas where we're looking at, like, unless there's a government grant. I mean, I don't think the most efficient long-term horizon nonprofit cooperative is making an investment of like $20,000 to connect a home, absent some federal program that's going to help to pay for it.
Yeah, I don't know. Josh and Donny talk to probably a lot more small ISPs than I do, but it's I think a lot of these guys finally got motivated to go out there and start trenching in some fiber so that people didn't overbuild them. And
yeah, I think
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we definitely see that. I mean, everybody on this call would agree that fiber is a very long-term play. Even if you're replacing electronics, like Donny could probably speak to fiber that's still in the ground from 20 years ago and Jaguar that's still serving people. But we see people doing a mix of private funds, public funds to build fiber constantly. Plus, you see, I mean, there's just a lot of money in fiber right now. You see the kind of the start of the contraction of the industry. So you see, like large companies gobbling up ISPs, and then they inject their VC money in, and they're building even more, right? So we're seeing some of that in Missouri and around the Midwest. So I mean, obviously, like BEAD funding and stuff are huge. I grew up down 3 miles of gravel road, so I definitely understand a rural lifestyle, and I understand the impact of having high bandwidth, just either from a medical or an educational perspective, let alone all the other stuff you can do with it. So it's a big deal. It is unfortunate that I think that, my personal opinion, we're fumbling the ball on BEAD right now, but there's nothing that any of us can do about it.
We'll see. Some of us are strategizing.
I mean, we're trying, right? And you guys are trying. At
least one of us can rant. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean,
it's important to do that because somebody's got to say the things that need said.
Yeah.
We're pretty fiber heavy here. I mean, our name is Fibersmith. I look at who's on this panel. I don't see anybody that doesn't know what fiber does. Wireless has its place too. And some of the new wireless gear, I mean, they can actually do this gig or even gig and a half. And that stuff's pretty good. And I don't have any problem with them putting that in if it isn't there, whether they fund it or not. I don't have a problem with that, but I do have a problem with funding something that I can maybe get 40/5 on a good day if the clouds aren't there and it isn't raining at my house because I got too many trees in my yard.
Yeah, and I don't know. Like, I was just talking with someone about how I'm more hawkish than many of the people I share domestic policies with, and like Russia's on the march, we see like significant issues with China, and the idea that like millions of people in America will be dependent on communications for satellites that are like super vulnerable in the event of anything going over. If we go with terrestrial fixed wireless, which is improving really remarkably, it's still something that is actually like much more hardened against an attack. We are so privileged being in North America. We don't even think strategically on a lot of things. The satellites don't stay in North America. That's not how it works.
Right.
I'm stopping there.
They do make beautiful light shows.
That was a half a rant, Travis. Half a rant.
That was half a rant.
I do want to say I did have John Chambers on the Community Broadband Bits show this week. I recommend people check it out. He does a really good job, and I'm pretty sure we kept all of it of talking about how. So we talk about fiber as a technology sometimes, and that's wrong. And all of us on this call, we know that, right? Fiber optic is a medium over which we apply technology to, and there is no end to it. There's no sense. I mean, we really probably will be using, and maybe it's the same conduit, maybe it'll be the same poles, but we're probably going to have a lot of the same fiber there in 40, 50, 60 years. And who knows how we'll be taking advantage of it, but it's going to be the same medium. And that's why it makes sense to do long-term investments. Travis, we want to wrap us up on that topic?
Yep. And so I installed my first fiber cable in 1990, and it's still running strong today. So there you go.
Yeah. And I talked to a utility in Chanute, Kansas. Their first one was in 1984 to a major load center for their electric utility. And they passed one bit back and forth. Is the major load on or is it off? And now they run a gigabit over that. So they got you beat by 6 years, but we're gonna see that for a very long time. All right.
It was ironic back in the day. They said, "Oh, fiber is going to have a life to it. It's gonna, it may be 20 years." We still have as good signal today as we did back then. So I'm still waiting for it to expire.
Doug, walk us through very quickly what was happening in New York City, and then we'll go on to the Fibersmith stuff.
In New York City, there was a very interesting potential terrorist attack. We think it's terrorist. Somebody went to the trouble of spreading 100,000 SIM cards in the vicinity of the United Nations when they were just having that big meeting where all the world leaders came in. And they caught them in time, but I guess they were going to turn them all on at the same time and ask for cell service. And that's essentially a cellular version of a denial of service attack. It would have shut down every cell site in New York City if they did that. And so there would have been no cell coverage of any kind. I mean, everybody would have gotten locked out. And so So, that's not something you do cheaply. That's why it's probably a terrorist attack. I mean, this is not a protest because, I don't know about you. I think the cheapest price I've seen to buy a SIM card is like $7 or $8. That's a lot of money to get 100,000
Well, in
SIM
coordination,
cards.
it's not some like small group of
No,
people.
no, it's all coordinated into yes, and it's all coordinated by someone's got us. I assume they found them through the server. They turned the server off. But
I mean, the timing
that's
is
crazy
interesting.
stuff.
I mean,
Yeah.
and again, like, sorry.
That's been around for years, but at a much smaller level. I mean, kids have bought cell blockers and taken them to the high school so the teachers couldn't talk on their cell. People have been doing this because the technology's out there to do blocking of the frequency. But
No, and
this scale we've never seen in this country.
But this is what I'm talking about. I do feel like we've gotten by with a fairly brittle communications system. We see it when there's horrible fires in the West and things like that where it breaks down. And again, like some of this is attributed to Russia. You can imagine North Korea doing this. But like someone's been cutting fiber optic cables in the Scandinavian countries. Right. Someone flew drones over the Copenhagen airport in a way that is not just some enthusiast messing things up. There's been a bunch of different things that are happening that are hinting at probes that make me nervous. So I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in on that. I want to move on to the Fibersmith pretty quick, but any thoughts on that?
I'll just add one thing. So when I was selling co-location, we would get requests like this in periodically of these random companies that wanted to deploy a ton of equipment in, and you'd send them a quote and they would immediately say, yes, let's do it. And it's just, there's so much fishy stuff's going out there. So my assessment is some colo in New York was trying to get a quick buck, and I'm impressed that they caught them. Let's just be honest.
Yes.
So who's ever watching that, well done.
Yes.
Then the other thing was, it was interesting. There's these fake scam texts with criminals driving fake cell towers through cities. I got to think this is the sort of thing, like just as we start to the FCC has finally cracked down on some robocallers. Like they're like, okay, cool. We've got a new thing. Yeah. A bunch of them just got shut down recently. I think.
If you need a roof, a business loan, or insurance, I've got 100 guys a day calling for them. So I don't know who they shut down, but they missed my phone number.
So this technology's been around a long time too, but this technology has normally been deployed by people who wanted to steal all the records off of all the cell phones. And so it was a good way. People's phones would actually pick up the fake cell site, right? Now they're turning it around. They're using it to make scam calls, which is, I have to say that's brilliant because you can't block them. The FCC's, all their good techniques don't work when you have your own cell site.
I've had 4 in the last 90 minutes.
Wow, you really are getting targeted. I mean, I've had a few, but like I feel like what it is that Google blocks, and with my Microsoft phone
yes, with your Zune audio player, yes, they can't target that anymore, can they?
Okay. Fibersmith, I wanted to dive into this, and again, like I think we should go back to that bar conversation where Donny was like, hey, I'm gonna build this software, and at the time I was sort of like, cool, like I had heard like several different entities saying that they were going to do something like that. You made it through the other end though, so tell us first what the software does.
Do you want to do it? You go ahead, Donny.
Go ahead, Josh.
All right, so. We have created a BOSS system that is geospatial.
What does that stand for?
So it's a billing operational support system. So basically, our software comes in and helps out broadband providers operate their business. Everything from subscriber acquisition to turning up services to billing to trouble tickets to kind of anything and everything. Really, the only thing we don't cover would be HR, payroll, and like a true accounting package. But we frankly handle everything else about what it would take to operate a broadband provider. So yeah.
And this is something that I feel like, I mean, there's a lot of experience with different ISPs. I feel like there's a bunch of stuff that has been available and it's always dissatisfying. And now it seems like we're in a space more where like this has been created by ISPs for ISPs, where it's more like it's relevant and not kind of something that was used for electric utility billing that was slightly modified to deal with ISPs. Is that more or less accurate?
Yeah, I think so. Donny and I both come from the operator space, and our other business partner, Nick. And so we definitely view things from an operator's perspective. And what's been really neat for us is there's a moment in time where, like, we can actually fund building a purpose-built software for this industry, as opposed to trying to glue something together to sort of make it work, right? Like, everybody on this call has been in a situation they're using bootstrap software they've built themselves, that they maintain and whatnot. And that is its own struggle, right? As opposed to just operating an ISP or whatever. So
you're giving me a lot of credit. I appreciate it.
No, that's been, and Donny, feel free to cut me off at any point, but like, kind of our guiding light on this project, when we started the software project, and I think it was 2017, was like, we want to help connect people. And, one of the ways we can do that is by providing operators a tool set that actually helps them do that. Right. I think there's a lot of operators out there with great intentions, but they end up spending so much time trying to cobble things together to make it work that they can't actually focus on their day job of providing service to customers. So really our goal from a software perspective is to help folks do that. And so that's what we've been doing. And I've personally been fortunate that Donny entrusted in me building out this side of the organization. And it's not been a perfect road, but we're definitely getting into a spot where we feel more comfortable about where we're at and where we're going.
Travis,
the only thing I'd like to add to that is we did this. BSS OSSs are not new. Doug, can you even remember a time there wasn't one that you can remember? No. I mean, I can't either. There's always been. The problem was they weren't priced for an ISP. A small ISP couldn't get into it until they were so big that their records were so difficult to untangle that they weren't able to use it to grow their business the way they could. So we tried to make this thing so it was available to anybody. So the software starts, I hope I can say this on here, but the software starts at $500 a month, including all their GIS and all these processes. And you have to be pretty small for that not to be able to work for you to do your stuff. So that was another big part of this.
Yeah, we started out, Donny, with COBOL systems. They were rough.
And prior to if you're a small ISP,
we started out with COBOL OSSs. Yeah, they were rough. So.
Yeah.
Donny, would small ISPs manage with basically spreadsheets and stuff like that prior to this?
Spreadsheets, napkins, drawings on paper.
Yeah.
Maybe some kind of light CAD for doing their records. But files and files of cabinets. The old Bells used to supplement their BSS OSSs with cards. And so they'd have circuit cards for everything. And there were some ISPs that went to things like that. And then there were just a lot that didn't have many records except in their head. And that worked really good until whoever it was got old enough to want to retire or move on. And then there was this shortage of records again.
Yeah, Travis, we recently had a conversation with someone that I think wanted some advice, and I asked you if you would join, and you did. And that's one of the places we're talking about Fibersmith. I was curious if, as we were going through that, what made you suggest them aside from the affordable costs? What made you think that would be a good solution there?
Well, I think Donny's right. It's its cost is one thing, but when we were evaluating, a lot of these were built by software engineers, not operators. And like the example we had where there was years and years of construction and incredibly terrible records, and now trying to sort out what is going on. I can't emphasize to people how important this piece of the puzzle is. And I'm terrible at homework, but this is without a doubt one of the most important things that will make or break an ISP. I mean, you saw the person we talked to, they have no idea where anything is. And it's like, now you got to go back and try to refigure that all out. Oof, that's going to be tough.
So that's the GIS part of it. That's that you were recommending.
The barrier, the hurdle to get in with Josh and Donny's pretty light. I mean, even MitchellNet could afford $500 a month, Chris. So,
Yeah, I mean, here in the swamp, we actually have a lot of jars with money that other people left and forgot where they were. So that's handy. Doug,
we know how to open jars, so we can make this work, Chris. Just let me know.
Doug,
Well,
you wanna ask any questions about
Yeah,
Fibersmith?
well, it's very interesting because this stuff has a very long history. I mean, I've had a 25-year saying as a consultant that every one of my clients hates their software. Nobody's ever been satisfied with it because they always, and all these big packages you could buy over the years, they would have their way of doing it, but it wouldn't match the way you wanted to do it. It was just not, because there was always 25 things you hated about it. And there were a lot of companies that tried to build their own like these guys did. There was a company called Contel who eventually became one of the pieces of General Tel, which became Frontier. And they tried to build their own, and it still wasn't working the last time I checked with them. And they had put $2 million of labor into building their own. And this stuff is complicated, especially back in the old software days of where it was really hard to program this stuff. So yeah, there's not been.
If you're saying
there's
the
not
old
been
days, if you're saying the old days, Doug.
Yeah, I'm talking 70s, 80s, the old days.
Punch
yes.
cards. Yeah.
This stuff has been around, and I actually worked with one that was punch cards. Yeah, so I actually worked at AT&T, and that's exactly what they had.
Yep. Yeah.
So, but the fact that you have one that can start cheap for a small guy is amazing, because that's, even recently, like the cheapest you can get going with most of them is 20 or 30,000. It's real easy to spend 100,000. That's a whole lot of money for a startup company. So,
yeah, I think,
we
one thing
wanted people to be able to buy it when they needed it instead of when they could afford it.
yeah.
Yeah. And we, when we went about this project, I think the evolution of BOSS and beyond the technologies, the programming languages, getting away from mainframes, no more punch cards. A lot of those things, even though they've moved through the different spectrum of technologies, they all kind of still work the same. They're always built around the subscriber. The tactic that we took was actually take a geospatial play. So kind of what Travis was talking about before, we really lean into the idea of the digital twin. So we want to understand your network first. We want to understand model layer 1 as much as possible, and then build on top of that. So we really kind of came at it differently, and then that has allowed us to really help folks. And then one thing that we did, I think really well, was we are process based. So I'm a big fan of Six Sigma, Toyota Production Systems, all those different process models, right? And so we embedded that naturally. Every ISP we deal with, it's the different sizes, different personnel, maybe different technologies. They all have the same struggles. It is the ability to track where your network is, do the same thing twice, and then ensure quality of service. Like, that's the fundamental things. And so the way we approached it has put us in a good spot for that. And hopefully our customers feel that way. As a software guy for the last 25 years, nobody's ever happy with their software. We realize that. But one thing we've really tried to do is listen to the feedback of our customers. I think because Donny and I and Nick come from the operator space, I think we all definitely know what it feels like to not be heard when you're talking to your software vendor or whatever. And so we're super mindful of that, and we try to get them engaged. In fact, we have a users conference here in Columbia every summer, and you guys should come and do your podcast down at our conference next year. That would be super cool. We could do a live version of it. But that's that whole strategy, is like bring our operators together, get them talking to each other, understanding what they're doing. This whole community we have. And then at the same time, we're listening in the background to understand what the heck we've messed up so we can fix it. Right. And that's quite frankly, everybody's trying to do, is make a better mousetrap and serve more people with broadband. So, yeah.
Yeah. The other big issue, Travis.
Sorry, Doug, before you go into that, I just want to say, Columbia is close enough that Travis could drive me without him driving off the road from being in a car too long with me. So we might take you up on that.
I think it's a done deal. We'll just make it happen.
Make the brakes. Doug, help.
Go ahead, Doug.
We can make this work.
Well, Travis hit on it, because the other big issue over the years has been transitioning from one of these packages to another, because no matter who you bought it from, one day they either went out of business. A lot of these folks have folded over the years, and all of a sudden you had to move all your stuff to another package. And that has been an absolute nightmare. I mean, I can't even, nightmare is there. We need a word that's better than nightmare for the process. And you would lose stuff, and then you would never recover it. And And so, and nobody kept their systems for more than 10 or 15 years when they had to make these changes. So when you just say OSS to folks, they just kind of crawl up into a ball and go, "Please don't hurt me, sir."
I mean,
so I want to ask for
Yeah.
people who haven't been in that situation, Josh, what is something that, like, for instance, you guys innovated on? What's something that you do really well that, like, an ISP would be like, oh man, I wish mine would do that?
So I think probably our number one strength is subscriber acquisition all the way through turnup, and that can include fiber construction or deployment. So it's end-to-end process for us, right? And because we understand the spatial layer first, our process engine can be smart enough to understand, without humans involved, what to do next. So Chris, you could go online, put your address in, sign up, and that's going to kick a process off. And then our system starts inspecting itself to understand what's going on at your house in regards to our network and equipment. Based off on that, it can make on-the-fly decisions to either roll trucks, turn you on, send you an invoice, all these things. And that's all streamlined within one system. Other companies do things like this, but what they do is they glue multiple systems together, and then they have to insert individuals in between those systems. And so they have to swivel chair, or they have to go grab a spreadsheet to understand what's going on. And so I think our biggest strength is the fact that we understand your network and what your network's, how it's going to be built or how it's built. And then we're using process to ensure that when we're behaving on actions on it, that we're doing actually what we want and not what the random employee thinks you should be doing, right? So we're very consistent in how we're behaving. I always kind of play the rule of like 70-30, 80-20. I want to fully automate 80% of things and then let the humans focus on the 20% of things. Oftentimes, I think that scenario flips with a lot of companies in growth, where you have all these all-star employees who are chasing all these details all the time, again and again and again. And they're focused on 80% of the operations, and the 20% of the things that are super important that the humans don't get time, right? Or they get time way after hours or on the weekends, and it never moves forward. So I think our strength is understanding your network and then chasing a process all the time to make things streamlined.
And I think Travis had another idea too.
You broke one of the important rules of this show, though. You said "turn you on," and we don't say that around Travis. I just want.
I have a lot of time on my hands now.
Yeah,
all the thunder, I think the approach you guys have taken to the force process is crucial for operators. May not appreciate the structure, but they'll start appreciating the structure when they start onboarding, hundreds of customers in a short period of time. I think the key is it cannot be ad hoc, and a lot of operators, and we were a small operator at one time. It was I like your swivel chair. Shoot, that's pretty nice. It's sometimes you don't even document anything, but if the process forces you to, it'll save you down the road.
Yeah.
And one thing to talk about the processes, I know Josh said we force the processes to work. They're your processes, though, as you as the owner of a company, you as the ISP. We don't care what your process is, and we'll even help you make it if you don't have one. But it's your process. It won't be the same as the next process. And that's the process that we enforce. It isn't one that we make. We have some suggested ones we'll put out there, but I don't know that any of those actually go into production. They just go there, and then it's a place for people to start from to put their own in.
Yeah.
Is there anything else on the software? I want to talk about the engineering side as well before we run out of time.
I mean, I could talk about software all day, but we should talk about engineering too. So
I'm going to take one more 2-sentence thing if I can.
Yeah, go for it.
When we started this, Josh would do a demo, and if the person taking the demo was real attentive and asked a lot of questions, he could make it last at least half an hour, maybe 45 minutes. Now, if the person, and that was everything the system could do 6 years ago. Now, if that same person sits through a demo and doesn't open his mouth, it will take 14 hours to go through the same demo.
And unfortunately, I've actually sat through that. Now there's some pizza in the middle of that, but yes, we have actually done that. There's a lot going on, and folks, oftentimes it's kind of cool. You see a little light switch flip, and they're like, "Wait, but could we do this?" And as we start talking about how we could unpack process to streamline whatever that is, it's cool because folks get excited about actually being able to correct things that they're struggling with.
And as we add the new things and the new processes and the new things that we accomplish, the price doesn't go up for the users. They get that just for being a customer.
Well, I got the sense in talking to someone else that I think is a rival to you in some ways, or like does some competing functionality. It sounds like you have a good relationship with others too, because Doug mentioned how hard it was switching, and it sounds like you're not trying to lock people into a proprietary system.
No, at the end of the day, we're in business to help companies grow and serve people, right? Our fundamental cause is to serve the underserved, right? And so whatever we can do to help companies do that, we do that, right? So that's our software, that's engineering, that's Donny working with folks, even just explaining the basics of what fiber is. I've seen that go down a million times at this point. I mean, we're a service-based company that we want to help folks first and foremost. If our solution is not the right one, then let's get you into a solution's the right one for you. That's our mindset. There's so much opportunity to go around. We want to focus on making sure people have what they need. So yeah.
And even though fiber is in our name, we do the same things that we do with fiber. We do it for wireless and we do it for coax as well.
Yep.
Cool. I wanted to ask you as well, because Donny, I know you played a role in RDOF. I talked with you briefly about your experiences with that. You're very active with construction. Doug said earlier, he thinks as many as 15 million, 15 million homes probably don't have the service that they would need, I think, to have an effective, high quality connection like we would want to unleash productivity and benefits and innovation and all that stuff. So that means that we have to figure out how we're actually going to connect them, regardless of whether it's a big federal program or we see states doing it. In all the work you've done over the years, I'm just curious if you have a sense of, like, if the next governor of Minnesota came to you and said, "What do we do, Donny, to get to the locations? We don't even know where they all are. What do we do?" What do you tell him or her?
Yeah, so it's a complicated problem, and that's part of why it hasn't been solved. But the reality is, this can be solved by actually doing the surveys needed to find out where we have customers or where people have the ability to get it and where they don't. And it's not going to be just where people think. We work with a very small company in Houston. And I did say in Houston. They are downtown Houston, and they have nothing. Literally nothing. They can get dial-up. And that is not where people think that there's a lack of broadband. But it is in the downtowns, and it is in some of the suburbs, and it is in the places that are in the cracks, because while RUS has funded a lot of rural builds, they won't fund any rural build if it's part of a greater metropolitan area, which means that it's suspiciously not rural, but it still is rural. And the density is so low that they're not going to build it because they aren't required to. The idea of, the territories that used to be with the incumbents and they had to build as a carrier of last resort doesn't really exist in the internet world. So there's these places out in the country. There's small towns that are in the country. Doug said he'd flown into one in Tennessee where they had nothing, and we see that. We work with those places where we can't get cell coverage to do our records, and so we have to take our stuff in at night to be able to upload it at a city 30 or 40 miles away. Kids in the country just don't have access to some of the stuff that they need for education.
Right.
And
So let me ask you that. So I 100% agree. That's a good place to start, with actually getting information that would be accurate. That's something that we don't have. Now, let's say for a second, though, that we end up with that information, and you have areas, in my mind, and I think you may agree, like, if you have a bunch of homes that are near like Paul Bunyan or CTC or one of the great Minnesota rural small carriers, a line extension program and that sort of a thing. But if you have areas where, there might be like CenturyLink and they're not interested in expanding and no one else is naturally nearby, are you sick of the auctions? Like, do you have a sense of how you would go about trying to figure out how to actually pay to fill those holes?
Yeah, the auctions have their pluses, but they have a lot of minuses. And the way the government programs have been done, it's been difficult to build on some of those programs. There are certainly ways to do it with government programs. We see it all the time. Just different states do it a little differently. The federal is different. Getting the money available there, it isn't that there isn't enough money, but we're spending money in a poor set of decisions as a country. The FCC spending, I don't know, what is it, Doug? Is it somewhere around $4 to $6 billion a year on broadband that only goes to schools and libraries and hospitals and government institutions? Just in the last few years is the first time you could even use something off of those lines that are going there for anything except that.
So yeah, we have a
That's
silo
taking
network basically.
That's
And
taking the anchor tenants out of a town, which is where the profitability comes in. So they're actually disincenting building, and they could use that to incent building the area instead of building a institution that doesn't need an individual build. And there isn't any institution now that I'm aware of that doesn't have access to broadband.
right, they're few and far between. There may be some again but they're few and far between.
Well, if satellite is broadband, I don't think there's any.
Fair enough. And I will throw it open. I don't know, Josh, let me give you a chance too. I don't know if you have any thoughts on like what you'd like to see in terms of what will inevitably some need to try to correct the many homes that are still not going to get served well.
I think there's two ways to look at it. There is the speed of getting someone internet access. I mean, obviously satellite's a no-brainer, a point-to-point wireless or multi-point. That's wonderful. For me personally, I would really love to see infrastructure truly built, that as we've talked about, those fiber lines are around for 40, 50 years, however long. I would love to see that, because I think that's the real path long term. I'm sure there's a balance to all of this. It's unfortunate when politics get involved and delay things, because it just costs everybody money, and it ultimately costs people opportunity, because people are growing up without, and that's the real loss in my mind. So yeah.
Doug and Travis, either one of you want to jump in?
I'll start first because I want to hit on something Travis said. The fiber today is far better than what Travis built in 1980, and his 1980 fiber is still working. I'm estimating the current fiber is probably good for 75 at least years, and it's drastically better in quality. It's so clear. It doesn't have the shift over time. So we're talking about some long-lasting networks, and if you build stuff in conduit, you got another 100 years because you just pull more fiber through it. So, but we do have ways to identify a lot of these places. We can do it with speed tests that concentrate on the maximum speeds, not the average speeds. That's not going to pick up those folks in Houston because they're not taking a speed test, right? But it will identify those rural areas where the ISPs lied on the FCC maps. We have the data. I mean, the FCC maps are a joke. This last week alone, I've talked to 6 ISPs who said they have neighboring areas that have this issue where it's claimed to be 120 or faster, and it's nowhere close to that. They would love to build into those areas, but they can't get the grant money for it, and they should have been able to get the grant money for it. So there's a huge amount of those places around, but we know how to find them. Those are not hard to identify.
Yeah. Travis, we're driving toward the end. What do you want to talk about in the last minute or two?
Remember Bob Barker at the end of The Price is Right would always say, spay and neuter your cats and dogs, So I'm trying to come up with
he was a terrible person. I don't know, we could have so many more dogs and cats. He really messed it up for us.
No, but I think it was a good message. I think the message I want to leave with these shows now is, please map your fiber networks. Sure, fiber is a great technology, but if you don't map it, oh man, it's the worst. So map your fiber networks, everyone. Call Josh.
I think that would be it. That's going to be the new sign off. You'll have to remind me of that before I forget. So that's how we'll end our shows from now on.
Well, I mean, do you know how many of these public? Well, Doug's probably more than me, but I think I'm maybe at 6 now. Or let's go look at this publicly funded network, and they had no idea where anything was.
No idea, right?
None. So we were pouring all this money into fiber, and while it was working great. But then somebody dug it up, and no one had a clue. So
yeah, no,
I mean, map your fiber, please.
Map your fiber. On that, I mean, I do feel like Doug's also got a lot of great stories about the Bell companies and their documentation. It's amazing. It's something that we can all agree on, which is that nobody freaking maps the fiber well, it feels like.
And if you're going to do these deep rural deployments, it's crucial.
Yeah.
Because I've seen 3 different times where a farmer dug up the fiber and conveniently buried it back because didn't want to get in trouble. Thought it was like a $1 million fine or something, and took weeks to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I remember there was a not to laugh, but like there was an area where there was landslides, and there was a municipal provider, and they did not have accurate maps, and they were trying to figure out where their vaults were because it had just been, it wasn't like a massive amount, but there was enough dirt that had shifted that covered all the heads of the vaults, and they actually one of the people that was more innovative went to Google Maps, got the closest look, and then just looked for anywhere where there was like a little bit of a reflection, and basically dug around there to find it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's battle. There's all kinds of stories out there, but just please accurately map your fiber networks. I'll leave.
Yeah.
That's my new end of the show statement.
All right. I think we're going to be back in 2 weeks. And we'll see. I don't know. I feel like it's been a while. Maybe we'll see if old Matt Larson would like to join us again. He's been talking a bit, and we can get his takes on some of the things that are going on from the WISP perspective, and mess around a little bit with that. But I think we're going to aim for about 2 weeks from now. I really want to thank Donny and Josh from Fibersmith. Appreciate what you're doing. I love anyone that can make life easier for small ISPs and make a path for success. So thank you for that. Travis and Doug, thank you once again for wasting some of your week with me. And
we have to fix the chat because we didn't hear from Ruben and all of our other buddies today.
I was actually I was trying to decide if I should be more public with my praise of Rand Paul and Ted Cruz and Candace Owens and others that came out for free speech over the Jimmy Kimmel issue. I feel like it was kind of a uniting issue for many of us that care about freedom of speech across different political opinions. So
let's all say hi to Ruben.
Yeah.
Hey, Ruben.
I was going to do that for
made his appearance.
Thank you for bringing Ruben in. Now mine was for Juan. But we will be back in 2 weeks. And until then, ladies and gentlemen, please map your fiber.